You ready, Tara?
Yes, Chairman, I've just checked the stream's going. Yeah, we're live, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon and welcome to this council meeting on Tuesday the 23rd of June 2020. My name is Councillor Bob Boyce and I am the Chairman of the Malden District Council. This meeting is held under new regulations which come into effect on the 4th of April in response to the COVID-19 situation. There are just a few housekeeping issues to run through, including our new working practices which have been implemented due to the pandemic and the etiquette for this meeting. First of all, please could I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure your microphone remains muted and your video feed off when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. This meeting will be hosted remotely via conference software, which allows members of the public to virtually attend the meeting whilst being able to protect themselves and others and observe the government's lockdown measures. We may encounter some glitches this afternoon, so I hope that everyone will bear with us as we get used to this new way of working. We are streaming this meeting live as well as recorded, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers, during each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating you wish to speak or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for any other purpose. Members, the process this afternoon will obviously be different, and for some items I may invite each member to speak in turn. Therefore, I would encourage all members to keep your contribution as clear and concise as possible, please. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number. Could I also ensure that everyone is directly connected to a power supply so that nobody drops out due to battery life shortage? And last, if members need to leave the meeting at any point, please do make this known and use the chat function to signify that you need to leave the meeting. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Richard Holmes.
Good afternoon, members. Richard Holmes, Director of Service Delivery.
Good afternoon, members. Paul Dodson, Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance.
Simon Quelch, one of the lawyers here.
We're already getting a lot of interference. Tara? Tara?
Sorry, Chairman. Tara Bird, Committee Services Officer. Thank you.
And I think we've got two other officers present. Please show yourselves.
Tim Howson, Specialist Conservation and Heritage.
Thank you.
I'm Gavin Kingsnorth. I'm a planning lead for the Development Consent Order for Bradwell B.
And Georgina Button, Strategy, Policy and Communications Manager.
Members, somebody has got some background noise. Would you please mute your microphone?
I think you'll find it's the theme to Star Wars, the Darth Vader theme. It's not me.
Beam me up, Scotty. Well, that's probably a previous existence. Right. This is very disruptive. Please stop that noise. Now, Tara, can you carry out a roll call of members to confirm who is in attendance, please?
Yes, thank you, members. I will call the names alphabetically. If you could just switch your microphone on and confirm that you're in attendance, please. Starting with Councillor Bamford, please.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Bassinger.
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Miss Beale.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Beale. Councillor Bell.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Yes, Tara, I'm here, thank you, at the moment.
Councillor Dewick.
Yes, present.
Councillor Durham.
Present.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes, present.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
Present.
Councillor Fluker.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harker.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Present.
Councillor Helm.
Present.
Hull. Councillor
Hull.
Yes.
Yeah, present. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Keys. Councillor Lagan.
Here, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Mays. Councillor Mays.
She was present earlier, Tara.
Yeah, we might. I'll just check, see if we've lost her, Chairman. Oh, she's there. Thank you. Councillor Morley. Councillor Morley. No. Councillor Morris.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Present, Tara, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Present.
Councillor Skeens.
Yep, here. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp.
Present, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Stilts.
Present, Tara.
Swain.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
I'm present, Tara, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Miss White.
I'm present, Tara.
Thank you.
If I may, Councillor Beale is experiencing log-on problems and he's expected to join us very shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Thompson here. Councillor Keys ditto is having trouble logging on. I put his number on the chat in hopes that someone can help him. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Right, Tara. I think we can go now to apologies for absence. Have you any?
I've got no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now go to agenda item 3, declaration of interests. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items of business on the agenda.
Can I make a point of order here, Councillor Boyce?
Please bring it up.
Well, there's a couple of things.
What statute or rule of the council are we breaking?
Well, first of all, the fact that you're chairing this meeting is a bit of a question mark for me, given that you are two of the items are about the Joint Standards Committee and you clearly have a direct interest. So I assume you will be declaring your interest. But then that makes me wonder why on earth you are chairing.
I don't think that's a point of interest.
Well, I think it's a point of interest and it's a point of order. I also can't understand how you're chairing the meeting when you step down from the dominant group. Or how any of the people named in this report, according to
Councillor Skeens. Councillor Skeens.
No, sorry, I haven't finished what I'm saying. How are
yes, you
of those
have.
people
Please
here and involved in this?
Let him speak, Bob. Let him speak, Bob.
All the people listed in that report, criticised in that report, are here and are going to vote on something that they clearly have an interest in. And I honestly feel that you shouldn't be chairing this. And I think, it's bringing the council into disrepute. That is my
thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now I've lost my place.
Well, sure, but you need to answer it, Councillor.
I'm going through. Will you let me finish this item, please?
Okay. Well, let's see who
disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda. having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8, inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. If any member has an interest to declare, please use the chat function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. And as you've kindly raised the issue, I do have an interest, a bias in agenda item on the motion, and that is why, and I have already informed the motion mover that it is my intention to abstain from voting on that motion. Now, Tara, is there anybody else indicating they wish to declare an interest?
Which motion?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Nunn, Councillor Mays, Councillor Stamp, Councillor Mrs Channer and Councillor Durham have all requested to speak on this item.
Right. Sorry, Councillor Mays first.
Councillor Nunn first, Chairman.
Councillor Nunn.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Items 7 and 12, in so much as I'm currently a member of the Joint Standards Committee and the declaration is of a non-pecuniary nature.
Thank you. Then Councillor Mays, was it, Tara?
Yes, Chairman.
Councillor Mays, if we can contact her.
Councillor Mays, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. Bear with me, Chairman. She's just going to put something on the chat, I believe.
Right.
Chairman, Councillor Mays.
10 and 16.
That's
yeah.
right, Chairman. Yeah.
Councillor, who was the next one on the list?
Councillor Stamp, Chairman.
Councillor Stamp.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare, well, I think it's non-pecuniary because I popped round to see you the other weekend because I was very concerned that you had resigned from the Conservative group. And I did explain to you, Chairman, that I thought you lived on your own, and I was very concerned that you was on your own and understood the severity of the decision you'd made. So I pulled a cabbage out of my garden and a carrot and an onion and popped down to the secret butcher's and bought you some bangers. And I think because of the way that this motion seems to be turning on its head at the moment and the things that are happening behind the scenes, which I'm sure I'll get into trouble for saying, I want every member to know that I popped to see the chairman because I was concerned of his health and well-being. And if that's a criticism, then I think it's a sad state of this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't quite know whether that's an interest, but thank you very much. I enjoyed the offerings and your company. We have now Councillor Thompson.
Channer, Chairman.
Councillor Channer.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. I wish to declare non-pecuniary on any matter that might be relate in any way to Essex County Council. But, Chairman, on agenda item number 10, I feel I must also declare a pecuniary interest on the Bradwell B project stage 1 consultation. I read the consultation document, Chairman, in some degree of detail, and on it there's a great big circle. Well, there's several circles, and it may not be the case that something will come there, but that circle, part of it, falls within the village of Althorne and not far, it appears, from where my property lies. So I have determined, in speaking to the monitoring officer, that I am getting out, Chairman. It may not go there, but I don't know, so I'm leaving the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Channer. We've got a long list still to go. Tara, who's next?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, next is Councillor Durham, Chairman.
Councillor Durham. Councillor Durham, you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry, Chairman. Good afternoon. A very straightforward interest. I have a non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council, anything pertaining to any particular item on the agenda, but also a non-pecuniary interest as I'm Deputy Cabinet Member for for economic development, which includes planning, and clearly the Bradwell B consultation falls within this portfolio. Thank you.
Is it Thompson, Councillor Thompson next? Tara?
Councillor Miss White, I've got before Councillor Mrs Thompson, Chairman.
Councillor Miss White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in items 6 and 12.
Thank you.
As I sat on the committee that's under scrutiny, effectively.
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Thompson next, Chairman.
Sorry, just before we go on, agenda item number 6, Chairman, is
hang on, Councillor Hurd. Councillor, let me hear Councillor Thompson first. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I think this might not be an interest. Sorry, terrible feedback. Terrible feedback. Can you turn yours down? I apologise for that. I think it's more full disclosure in that I am a member of the Joint Standards Committee. In fact, I'm the chairman of it, but I wasn't a member of the committee the last time it sat. I haven't had anything to do with the report. I haven't seen it. I haven't spoken. I haven't been interviewed in relation to it. And as far as I know, I'm not mentioned. So I think I'm okay to vote because I have nothing to do with any of the items causing problems at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd, did you want to add something? Was it you that interjected?
It's only on, I think Councillor Miss White said she had an interest in agenda item number 6. I've got that down as Chairman's announcements.
Okay. I'm sure Miss White probably meant that 7. Did she? No, she didn't mean. I've got 2 7s. The notice of motion, I assume that Miss White meant. Right, Councillor Harker.
Yes, I've got, Chairman, thank you. I've got the same as you with a motion number 7.
Thank you. Right.
Chairman, I've got Councillor Jarvis as well.
Oh, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, Chairman. And obviously, I sat in as a substitute on Joint Standards Committee. I don't know whether I wasn't going to declare it as a pecuniary interest because obviously that's on record at the council, but other people seem to be doing it. So for the sake of completeness, I wish that to be noted.
Thank you very much. Right, then I think we go on to agenda item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of May 2020, found on pages 7 to 16, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone, state your name now, please. Is that seconded?
Thompson seconded.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Durham wishes to speak.
Councillor Durham.
Chairman, can I just give a small piece of advice to your good self as chairman and to other members to mute your microphone, because all members have heard or overheard a conversation that took place on your telephone a little while ago. Be very careful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure somebody else does. Now, this is a matter of accuracy. And Tara, we need to take a vote on this.
Yes, Chairman, unless members wish to deal with it by assent.
Do members wish to deal with this by assent?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Agreed. That's agreed then.
Agreed.
Right. Now we go on to public questions. Agenda item 6. There are no I have received no questions from the members of the public. Then I go on to agenda item 7. I seem to have 2 agenda item 7s, Chairman's announcements. Other than that, I took part in a flag raising week for Armed Forces Week last Friday. There was a press release put out, and I'm sure members have seen it. But we owe a great deal to our armed forces, both for what they do in defending the country and protecting others in other countries, but recently with their work from the MOD with the support for the COVID pandemic. And I think it's particularly poignant that this was the week that Dame Vera Lynn died. Thank you. I now go on to the notice of motion. Mrs. Stamp.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a motion that myself and Councillor Siddle put to the Council. I wondered if Councillor Fluke would like to describe it as what he did on the personal phone call he made before this motion started. Very colourful introduction, Councillor Fluker, and I'm very disappointed that you've already made your mind up and were speaking to somebody else on the phone to say get it off the table. I'm very upset about that. Obviously, he's already made a predetermined judgment that he wants this motion off the table before it is debated, Chairman. But I will continue. My motion was, and I'll read it in its entirety, members, so if you'll just forgive me or bear with me.
Could you put your camera on, Wendy?
Yeah. It really is better without it, Councillor Skeens.
You actually have got 4 motions. I did tell you that I was going to take it as one, but there are reasons which will come clear why I can't.
Okay. Well, I'll read it. Do you want me to read it, Chairman, or would you like to?
Yes, that's your prerogative. Yes.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Keys. Is Councillor Keys joined us now? Welcome. Malden District Council has a statutory duty to promote and maintain high standards of conduct by its councillors and cooperative members. Section 27, brackets 2 of the Localism Act 2011. The Act requires the council to adopt a code of conduct. It is not required in law for MDC to adopt a joint standards committee, but it is good practice, and why wouldn't they? In light of internal investigations, I propose the following motions to council. It states quite clearly, Chairman, the motions have been set out separately for ease of voting. Now, motion 1 and 2 stay the same, but motion 3, when it comes to it, I will invite Councillor Siddle to speak because there has been an amendment, if you will allow him to do it, Chairman. Is that okay?
Yeah, so far, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make some rulings in a minute.
Okay, well, I'm sure you're ready because I do know a little bit what's been going on behind the scenes, but there you go. Motion 1, to disband the Joint Standards Committee in its current form and all appointed councillors. There's a motion on the table, Chair. Are we taking that now? Are we debating it?
Yeah. We'll if you like, you can read out all your 4 motions at once, and then we'll go back.
Okay, so that was motion 1, members, to disband the Joint Standards Committee in its current form and all appointed councillors. Motion 2. Do you want to allow somebody to speak, or are you waiting?
I'm waiting for you to finish.
Motion 2. The council waives the overall political control of the authority, political balance, to reconstitute the Joint Standards Committee. Motion 3. Councillor Siddle, would you like to read motion 3, the amendment, or Chairman, do you want me to read the old one out?
If you're amending your motion 3, Mr. Quelch, is this permissible?
Well, Chairman, the motion is, if it's going to be amended, you firstly actually have to have the original motion.
Okay, just read it out.
And then obviously someone needs to go through the amendment process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll read it out
please
then.
read it out. Yeah.
The committee will consist of 8 elected members plus 2 parish council observers, no voting rights, and the independent person, no voting rights. Little 1, 4 members to be appointed from both main parties each, not excluding non-aligned members or other political groups. Oh, I think that was amended, Chairman.
That was the amended
That
version.
was amended. Sorry, I do apologise. The committee will consist of 8 elected members, 4 from each political group, plus 2 parish council observers, no voting rights, and the independent person, no voting rights. Motion.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Motion 4, the chairman and vice chairman to be appointed not from the same political group. Now, there was an amendment put forward because of the furore.
Well, can we get the formal second in on this first?
Councillor Hurd, happy to second that, Chairman.
Well, I've got Councillor Siddlers.
Yes, so can I please second it, and can I also please speak before I give the revised motions?
I
have a right to speak.
No, it's formally a motion on the table. You're moving an amendment now. Please read the amendment.
So before I read the amendment, I would really like to put my point of view as well.
You're the seconder and you're entitled to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Chairman. This motion has been brought by myself and Councillor Stamp as an opportunity to show that the members of the council can work in a cooperative and cohesive manner. Some things like fairness and justice should be above party politics and council group dynamics. These motions have been designed so that the Joint Standards Committee in the future can operate in a fair and balanced way. This will demonstrate that this council believes in operating in a manner that is above party politics and personal issues. That where there is an issue around conduct and behaviour, that fair and reasonable justice is seen to be done. The people of Malden District and the staff within the council need to see that the members of the council demonstrate excellent conduct. That we can set an example, not only in the way that we behave, but also in the way that we judge each other. Some of the impression this council has created recently has not been positive and constructive. Where a council has an internal joint standards committee, it has to act in the most professional and competent way possible. By passing these motions, the council demonstrates that this council wants the joint standards to act in this way and is also constituted legally. The Localism Act of 2011 says that the Joint Standards Committee is an ordinary committee. An ordinary committee normally has to reflect the overall political control of the authority. The 2011 law also says that this can be waived by a vote of the council. This is the intention behind the motion. The dialogue and the impression of Malden District Council needs to be changed so that we are seen to be acting in the best interests of the district, the council and its members. This goes beyond political groups and tribalism. Since I was selected as a candidate for the Conservative Party, I have been subjected to untruths, backstabbing, and as the time progressed up to last year's election, and since I was elected, that turned into more untruth, direct and indirect bullying, homophobia, intimidation, being undermined, stabbed in the front, stabbed in the back. I have suffered stress and anxiety as a result. I have been bullied, both verbally and mentally, and at times I've dreaded what will happen next. Even after I raised the complaint, the homophobia and bullying was continued, including a remark that was made last week. As a member who has been subject to repeated and constant acts of misconduct, I hope that for myself and others that we make Joint Standards Committee that will consider any complaints in a fair and just manner. This is what these motions intend to do. The motion 2, just for clarity, does not remove political balance from all committees. It is just for the Joint Standards Committee. Motion 3 will now read, this committee will consist of 8 elected members, plus 2 parish council observers, no voting rights, and the independent person, no voting rights. The 8 members should reflect the balance of the membership of the council. However, no group should have a majority on the committee. All political groups, a group is defined as 3 or more representatives and is recognised as a political entity within the council should have representation. Any substitutions must be made from the same political group. Thank you, Chairman.
I don't know whether Tara has actually got a note of that amendment because it seemed to be rather convoluted and I didn't get it all and I didn't quite follow it.
Would you like to read it again, Chairman?
Tara, did you pick it up at all?
Yes, I think we've got most of that, but if Councillor Stamp wants to go through it again for clarification.
Please do. That would be helpful.
Thank you. The amendment.
I just want the amendment that you're, or the revision that you're making.
Yes, please. The committee will consist of 8 elected members plus 2 parish council observers, no voting rights, and the independent person, no voting rights. The 8 members should reflect the political balance of the membership of the council. However, no group should have the majority on the committee. All political groups, a group is defined as having 3 or more members and is recognised as a political entity within the council, should have representation. Any substitutions must be made from the same political group. And then motion 4, Chairman, was
no,
the
that's
chairman.
all right. Leave that for the time being. I think that I've picked up some inconsistencies here. Is the motion suggesting that a political group should be moved from 2 people to 3 people? Because I think that 2 people become a group, and there seems to be a dichotomy in the motion where you say in one place it's going to be politically balanced, and then another that no group has a majority of members. That seems to me. Mr. Quelch, did you pick all this up?
Well, just let you know, mate, you're not in my. Wouldn't have you?
Yes, Chairman. I agree with you. There does seem to be an inconsistency in it that the 8 members should reflect political balance, although it then does go on to say no group shall have a majority. So I suppose what it's trying to say is, as far as is possible, the principles of political balance should apply, but not to the extent that one group has a majority. I think that's what it's saying.
Yep.
I think that's the intention.
Yeah, but that's an impossibility in my view. You can't have a group of a committee of 8 members that reflects the political balance as stands at the moment. That reflects the political balance, because the political balance would be 5 and 3.
Well, I think actually, Chairman, if I may say, if it's 8 members, my calculations are that the Conservative group at the moment would have 4.08 members. The independent group would have 3.12 members, and you've got to take up the non-aligned. They can't obviously allocate, but they still need to be taken into account in the calculation, and that's 0.8 with 3 non-aligned members. So that translates, Chairman, to me into, on a committee of 8, 4 Conservatives, 3 independents and 1 non-aligned member, which doesn't give a majority.
Chairman, can I actually say that I think the motion needs to actually get some credit that the non-aligned members are now being included, because they've never been included before.
Yeah, I'm getting lots of requests to speak. I think the political balance argument, you can't have 4.8 members or 1.2. The normal rule is 4.8 you would round up to 5, and 3.2 you'd round down to 3. That's a normal way, because it also has to take into account all the political balance across the whole council. But I'll let that ride for the moment. I'll accept the motion as reworded. Right. Now I need to open the debate to members, and the first motion that we have. There's the issue of 4. motion 4. I don't think that's been put formally yet, has it?
The chairman and vice chairman will be appointed from the 2 largest groups, Chairman. That's what that says.
Yeah. And all these are seconded by Councillor Siddle. Okay, can we go back to square one then? I'll take each individual motion separately. So the first motion is to disband the Joint Standards Committee in the current form and all appointed councillors.
Can we have a recorded vote, Chairman?
But we have got lots of speakers, and I'll take all 4 motions, as it were, together, although we will vote separately on them. Is that agreeable, Mr. Quelch?
No, they all vote separately, surely.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, that's absolutely right, Chairman. You can actually have the debate relating
the debate
to
all 4.
Yeah, and then a vote on each one. That's correct. That's quite in order, Chairman.
Yeah. Right. Who's the first speaker, Tara? I know Councillor Durham wishes to speak.
First speaker, Councillor Skeens.
Councillor Skeens.
Hi. Yes. I'm very first of all, this whole motion has my support, complete support, because I'm very concerned about the reputation of the council. I am particularly alarmed about the comments that we heard from Councillor Faluka before the meeting, in which he said that he wanted to get the motion overturned, get it off the table. To quote, "We need to get all this bollocks away." And that to me is predetermination, and I think that excludes him from both the debate and the voting. And I want to make the point that nobody who's currently on the Joint Standards Committee who have been named in this report, the names of which have been released, should be voting. And that, Councillor Boyce, I'm afraid includes you too.
Didn't you hear my declaration of interest, Councillor Skeens?
I did, but and that's fair. That's absolutely right. And I heard one other, but there are more to be heard.
Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just sitting here confused and bemused, because I want to know what is going on. Where has all this come from? At a group meeting, Conservative group meeting last week, I asked the leader about the existence of a report that has been widely publicised by a lot of people, and he said he was unaware of the existence of a report. Is there a yes? That's exactly what he said. I'm afraid he said he wasn't aware of a report or its contents, and I'm sure other group members will.
He's a liar.
Well, no, that's not. Please, let's keep this sensible. Let's keep this adult.
It is sensible. It's a liar.
Can I please? Is there a report? Is there a report questioning the probity of the last Joint Standards Committee? Yes or no? That's all I want to know, because I want to know how we got here. Thank you.
Chairman, would you permit me to?
Mr. Quelch.
I think this is an inappropriate forum for these sorts of matters to be discussed. They have no relevance here, the specific details, and I think it is inappropriate for members to ask questions on these particular matters or to give any indications whatsoever of any investigations that are taking place. This is a motion that is independent of all those matters. It is a governance motion, and so in my view, Chairman, members should desist totally from any indications, innuendos or express statements about any investigations in relation to any member.
Thank you very much.
It is in the public interest. It is in the public interest. The public deserves to know what's going on, because this council is corrupt.
The public will find out what's going on at a
I know
suitable
they will,
stage.
because I'll be telling them.
At the moment,
we
haven't.
To be transparent.
I know this motion was designed to embarrass me as much as possible, but I am trying to get through it in a proper manner. Please be quiet.
Chairman.
You embarrassed yourself. You have put this council into
Can I have the next speaker, Tara?
Chairman, I do not seek to embarrass you. I do not seek to embarrass any particular member. I'm happy to withdraw that question because Mr. Quelch has confirmed the existence of an independent report. Thank you so much.
You embarrass yourself, Bob.
Tara, Who's the next speaker?
Councillor Fluker is the next speaker, Chairman.
Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yeah, look, I agree in principle to all of this, but what concerns me is how do we apply this to our own governance? And that's what concerns me enormously. I mean, look, Councillor Siddle made a very, very passionate statement earlier on, and I agree with most of what he said. But he was talking about fairness and cohesion, and the latest, the revised motion 3, which I've got in front of me, basically excludes anybody that's not aligned. That's what this actually does, unless they're in a political group of more than 3. Now, we know that from our own constitution, a political group has to be 2, and then you certainly get allocation of rights and everything else. But there is this exclusion, and I'm very, very uncomfortable to think that as we move through this administration, if for any reason there are members that don't want to sit in a political group, they want to sit on their own, they could be totally excluded. Now, where we are at the moment...
Councillor Fluker, I have to stop you. Councillor Swain has raised a point of order. Councillor Swain, what's your point of order? It must relate to statute or our rules.
I wish to ask for a vote on whether we take these motions individually or together.
I have ruled that we're dealing with the motion, all 4 motions in one debate, but we will be voting individually. So you won't need to have a motion to vote. Councillor Fluker, please carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So, you know, what my overarching point is at the moment, the way this motion stands at the moment, it is going to exclude 3 members from participating in this standards committee. Now, going forward, that could be more, but it is at the moment it is 10% of the council will be excluded from the standards committee. Now, in my mind, that cannot be right, and yeah, I do feel passionate about that because I don't want to see anybody treated in that way. If they're a member of this council, they should have every right to sit on the committee if possible. So yeah, I don't agree with that part of motion 3, but I've made it absolutely clear that I agree with everything else. This is a hugely complicated matter, Chairman, and I'm sure that as this debate goes on, I think it will become more and more complicated because I've been involved in conversations with the monitoring officer, I've been involved in conversations with others over the last few days, and this whole thing has evolved, and it's quickly becoming a constitutional or procedural nightmare. My view is, Chairman, is that we should send this resolution, which, as I said, I agree, or motion, I beg your pardon, which I agree with in principle. We send it to performance, governance and audit. That's why we have this committee, the governance committee. We send it to the performance and governance committee. They can go through this motion. They can make it absolutely watertight and fair for everybody on this council, and then come back to council, Chairman, with their recommendations. And that is what I think we should do, and that is what I was alluding to earlier. We need to have a proper debate around this in the governance committee, Chairman. So I'm afraid that based on that, I have a different view. But of course, my mind always remains open until such times as I've heard the whole debate. Thank you.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
It did, Councillor Fluker, and you're actually being out of order.
Tara, who's the next speaker?
Next speaker is Councillor Hurd, Chairman.
Councillor Hurd.
Yes, that's right, Chairman.
Councillor Hurd, please. Mark, where are you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right. First of all, okay.
Turn your camera on, Mark.
There we are. First of all, I'm astounded by Councillor Fluker's newfound concern for non-party members. Ever since May 2019, he has ignored the fundamental level of democracy by refusing to work with the independent group to represent the district. Even though we represent 100% of Malden, 75% of Burnham, 50% of Hawthorne, Southminster and Heybridge. We had no joint manifesto and no personal issues with the Conservative group, but we have encountered huge resistance from the leadership who saw us only as opponents and not partners. The election result must have been a shock to them, but the leadership has been designed to keep outsiders out and those in charge in complete charge. Now, on most committees, we accepted that we were represented as the lesser party, but this has not been effective, fair, or indeed legal in the case of the Joint Standards Committee. So in order for this council to demonstrate true impartiality when addressing internal matters and issues, political balance must be shared 50-50, not 5-1 against. How can this be true, open and transparent? The issue is not will Conservatives support Conservatives or independents support independents, but is the individual right or wrong? If they are wrong, then they should be found to do so. But you can't do this by directing members or whipping them to comply. If we can't agree to work together for what is right and what is wrong, there is no hope for us. So I hope that councillors will look at these. I hope that councillors will look at these motions and consider them very carefully for the best interests of council and not personal gain. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Tara, who's next?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bassinger is next, Chairman.
Councillor Bassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to also give my full support to this motion, and I think it's about time that this motion was really brought to say exactly what it was meant to be. It's about fairness. Being probably the only councillor, apart from Councillor Siddle, of course, that has experienced, as far as I'm concerned, bullying. I've been, as far as I'm concerned as well, persecuted. I went through the Joint Standards Committee and I've felt absolutely, ever since that judgment that found me guilty for something absolutely ridiculous, such as not really mentally being aware of what I was doing, apparently, or something, and making a wrong declaration. I was reported to the police, but that was by a majority of Conservatives. And I felt that it was so unfair, and I've had stress, and I felt as though I've been able to speak freely ever since. And I think this motion is exactly what this council needs. I think we need to show some form of fairness, and I think the public need to see that we are a council that is acting fairly. So I absolutely strongly and hope that everyone else will support this motion. Thank you.
Tara, who's next?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bamford is next, Chairman.
Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, it takes me a minute to get everything on. I have no problem with this motion except the part 2. And I think it would be better. I know the intention is that this should only relate to Joint Standards Committee, but the way it reads, it could be construed to mean the whole council. So I think it just needs to say, in relation to the Joint Standards Committee, and then the rest of it, just to make it doubly clear that it is just in relation to Joint Standards Committee. So that's what I'm proposing. And apart from that, I am happy to agree this motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bamford. Tara, next, please.
Did someone second that, Chairman?
Councillor Stamp did.
You can't make an amendment.
Seconded, Councillor Bell.
You can't make an amendment until there's something to amend, and at the moment we've got nothing to amend.
Well, haven't we already amended motion 3?
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I'll review that. Your amendment was to which
It's part two, motion 2, just to add at the beginning, in relation to the Joint Standards Committee only.
Okay. Okay, that was seconded by Councillor Bell.
Chairman, would it help if, sorry to interrupt, Chairman, if you permit me, just to help the amendment motion 2, could we just, if this is what members want to do, could it just read that the council waives, and then knock out the words the overall political control of the authority, council waives the political balance to reconstitute the Joint Standards Committee. Then it's clear.
Okay, Chairman, I have no problem with that suggested amendment by Simon Quelch. Thank you.
Okay, right.
Yes, agreed.
I'll assume for the moment that that's accepted by council, and we won't need to vote on that just yet. But I'll include that as the second motion if Mrs. Stamp and Mr. Siddle, Councillor Siddle are agreed. Councillor Stamp, do you agree with that?
I do,
Your
Chair.
motion.
I do, and I thank Councillor Bamford for trying to find a resolution. Thank you.
And I also support it, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Then we go to who's next?
Councillor Mrs. Channer's next, Chairman.
Mrs. Channer.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just trying to come in there. Chairman, just to say, I'm very clear that this isn't anything to do with some independent report that may be in existence or not. I certainly haven't seen one. However, I think we've heard what Mr. Quelch said on that score, and Councillor Durham withdrew that question. This motion is what is important before the council, and what this motion is trying to achieve is quite clear to me. It's to abandon the Joint Standards Committee as it sits and constituted currently, and to reconstitute it. And Mr. Quelch has just added clarity to motion 2, which I have to say was a concern to me, and Councillor Bamford's covered that off. And then the other area, motion 3, we've heard about an amendment there, and motion 4. To me, it's quite straightforward what this is all about. The current Standards Committee does not remain. It's reconstituted. It's fairly done to have representation across the council, and then move forward with that, Chairman. I think that's what the essence is all about.
Thank you, Mrs. Channer. Tara, who's next?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Jarvis is next, Chairman.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to say that I pick up on a few points. I mean, in general, I give my, I think I'm minded to give my support to the motions that have been put forward, and have noted the comments from Councillor Bassinger. And obviously, I think Councillor Bamford's amendment is also appropriate, as we've heard from the monitoring officer. I'd just like to pick up on, I think, probably the only outstanding query that I've heard, which Councillor Fluker raised regarding unaligned representation. Of course, perhaps in an ideal world that would be the case, but all councillors who are unaligned and therefore haven't associated themselves with a particular group, I find it difficult to see in trying to achieve this fairness, the overall issue that we're trying to achieve. I find it difficult to see, unless you wanted a council mathematically that had, sort of about 20 people on it, a committee that had 20 people on it, how you could actually achieve that. So I think this is a compromise on that particular point. But I think the overall objective here is to have a committee that is seen to be fair. And I think in that respect, I note that the unaligned wouldn't have representation on this committee, but I think the overall objective still works. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Tara, who's next?
Next is Councillor Fleming, Chairman.
Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to record my amusement at Councillor Fluker's remarks. Thank you.
Tara?
Chairman, Councillor Lagan, I have next.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. I could speak as a non-aligned member. I fully support the motions that have been put forward
and we're debating this afternoon, because time is for collaboration in this council. I also very much like Councillor Fleming with Councillor Fluker's comments beforehand, because the viciousness and self-interest and the politics that have been played since the day many of us elected members walked through the door of that chamber full of hope that we could actually be a collaborative force for good and change what has been a challenging council with a challenging reputation. It really does sum up why we need to change, why we need to get this motion through, so that we are representative, that we are not seen to be fair, we are fair, and that we stand for the things that we were elected for rather than politics. And I'm very, very, very happy to support what's been discussed this afternoon, and be very, very happy to discuss and support when we get the chance for new leadership. Thank you, Chair.
Here.
Tara?
Chairman, I've got Councillor Mrs Thompson wants to come back in relation to a comment Councillor Bassinger made.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. No, I'm not going to come back. I might do that by email. It's going to get too complicated.
Thank you. Tara, have we anybody else?
That's all I have, Chairman.
Right. Now, I believe the procedure would normally be for the leader to have a say, and then for the motion mover to have the summing up. Councillor Fluker, do you wish to say anything further at this stage?
Chairman, no, but I'm quite well. No, and yes, I'm quite pleased to see where the debate's going, and I think we're sort of sorting everything out. I hear what Councillor Lagan says, and also Councillor Jarvis said about the exclusion of non-aligned members. It's a shame that we still haven't worked out a way of doing that. You know, to me, a simple way would be to do it would be to juggle the political balance, taking non-aligned as a collective, then allocating them probably one or however many seats, but making sure that overall the majority doesn't rest with one party. The other thing, Chairman, is, and looking at the chat, I think that we've had, and you know, and I hope the Monitoring Officer will come back to that comment, because to see if there is a way that we can possibly do this. But I think because we've had amendments, it might be a good idea, Chairman, before we vote, that we have the amendments put up so members fully understand what they're voting on.
Thank you. Mrs Stamp, would you like to sum up the debate, please? And move your motion?
Yes, I'd like to thank all members that had showed no predetermination to throw it out the window before it was actually on the table and debated it fully. So I do thank you all for that. I think the other councillors, all of them spoke absolutely fantastic and eloquently, and everybody knew the spirit of what this motion was. Whether there's some little nitpicking areas that need to be strengthened by Mr Quelch and the excellent team of officers we've got, they could accompany us that. But the essence is, quite clearly, as the other members said, we want to be seen to being open and transparent and fair. So I'd like to thank them all. This is the essence of me.
I've got to stop you, Mrs Stamp.
You actually said stop.
Councillor Hurd has raised a point of order. Councillor Hurd, your point of order, and I hope it relates to statute or our rules.
Yes, it does, Chairman. This is actually Procedure Rules 1. It's found on page 121 of the Constitution, that the opposition leader will be the penultimate speaker.
Fair point. I apologise. Mrs Stamp, do you wish to stop and Councillor Hurd to have a say?
Of course I do. I'll give way to Councillor Hurd.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really just to say to all members that this is an opportunity to be true and honest to this council, and I do hope that when they do vote that they will take that into consideration. I also note Councillor Fluker's words at the start of this, and I'd like to make it clear that as far as the independent group are going, this is a completely free vote. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp, sorry for the interruption. Please continue.
Chairman, you won't be surprised at my age. I've lost my flow, but I will try. Sorry.
I know the feeling very well.
I thought you might, Chairman. Yes, I just really want to say thank you, and you've all got to vote with the idea. The spirit is there. There may be some tweaking, and I hope that we are allowed to tweak, or the officers can help us to make sure it is. This motion, Chairman, was never ever designed to exclude anybody. We've worked hard to try and do this, and you know, to me, it's the best for the council, and I hope that all the members choose to support it, and I'd ask for a recorded vote on every motion, please.
Okay, is that seconded?
Councillor Hurd seconded.
Yeah, thank you. Right, then we can proceed to take the first vote on the first motion. Tara, will you call the roll?
Yes, Chairman. So, members, this is voting on motion 1. I will call the names out, and if you can just respond if you're for, against, or abstaining, please. Thank you. So, starting with.
So, I'm so sorry to butt in, but could we see or at least hear the motion as we've ended up with it?
No, this motion 1 is unchanged. It's to disband the Joint Standards Committee in its current form and all appointed councillors. It does away with the Standards Committee as it's constituted at the moment. Carry on, Tara, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bamford.
For.
Councillor Bassinger.
For.
Miss Beale.
For.
Councillor Brian Beale. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Just coming in, sorry, 4.
Councillor Dewick.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Durham is 4, I can see from holding up. Councillor Edwards.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
4.
Councillor Fluker.
4.
Councillor Harker.
Abstain.
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Helm.
Abstain.
Oh.
Abstain.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Keys.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
4.
Councillor Mays.
Has anybody said against?
Councillor Mays. 4. Just to confirm, that's 4. Thank you. Got that. Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Morley.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Most definitely 4.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
4.
Siddle.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
4.
Councillor Stamp.
4.
Stilts.
4.
Councillor Swain.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
4.
And Councillor Miss White.
Thank you, Tara. I'm going to abstain because it's I have an interest in this matter, so I don't feel that I can vote on it.
Thank you. So, Chairman, the results of the vote in relation to motion 1 is 24 in favour, so 4, 6 abstaining and nobody against.
Thank you, Tara. That motion is therefore carried. Can we move on now to, I believe, an amended motion 2, was it?
Yes, Chairman, a motion 2. Did you want me to put it on the screen?
Please do so.
Bear with me, Chairman, for one moment. So this is motion 2 as amended. That's my understanding of how it was amended.
Okay. Members see that? Please call the roll.
Chairman, may I just confirm?
Can't see.
No,
is that the wording that that Simon Quelch advised?
The council waives political balance to reconstitute the Joint Standards Committee.
Yes, Chairman, that's what I suggested, just the removal of the words, the overall political control of the authority. I think that's where the confusion was.
Yes.
Some members. So removing that, the council waives political balance to reconstitute. It's a bit ineloquent, but I think it's clear.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure, Chairman, that it is clear. It might read better to say the council waives political balance on the Joint Standards Committee in order to reconstitute it.
Okay. Fair enough. I think that's reasonable. That specifies this only relates to the Joint Standards Committee. So we can now vote on that, Tara.
Thank
you. You've done your magic.
Like that, Chairman. Okay.
You've crossed on the Joint Standards. To reconstitute, you need to take out reconstitute, I think.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Or move it somewhere else.
The council waives political balance on the Joint Standards Committee in order to reconstitute it. Is that how Councillor?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you happy for me to take the vote now, Chairman?
Please do.
Okay. As before, members, I call the names out alphabetically. If you could just advise if you are for, against or abstaining. Thank you very much. Starting with Councillor Bamford, please.
For.
Bassinger.
For.
Councillor Miss Beale.
For.
Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Channer.
For.
Councillor Dewick.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Are you not able to get on? Okay, all right. It's up.
For, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For.
Councillor Fluker.
For.
Councillor Harker.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Helm.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Hull.
For.
Councillor Jarvis.
For.
What did Fluker say?
Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Lagan.
For, please, Tara.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Morris.
Most definitely for.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Skeens.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Oh, sorry, Tara. Yes, for.
Thank you. Councillor Stilts.
For.
Councillor Swain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Thompson. Councillor Mrs Thompson. Thank you.
For.
And Councillor Miss White.
Abstain due to an interest.
Someone back in there. Chairman, the result of motion 2 is 26 for, nobody against and 4 abstentions.
That gets me out of a major problem. Thank you, Tara. We then move on to the amended motion 3, which you have on your screen.
Yes, Chairman.
Is everybody familiar with that? Okay. Please take the roll.
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to call the names again as members, just if you could advise if you're for, against or abstaining. Starting with Councillor Bamford, please.
For.
Councillor Bassinger.
4.
Miss Beale.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Mrs. Channer.
4.
Thank you. Jewett.
Okay, abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
4.
Edwards.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
4.
Luca.
4.
Parker. Councillor Harker.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Helm.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Hull.
Abstain.
Councillor Jarvis.
4.
Councillor Keys.
4.
Lagan.
4, please, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Mays.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Definitely 4.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
4.
It still doesn't make sense.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
4.
Councillor Siddle.
4.
Councillor Skeens.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp. Councillor
Winning.
Stamp.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
You've missed me, Tara.
Who's that? Sorry.
Councillor
Miss
Stilts.
Apologise, Councillor Stilts.
4.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
Abstain. I'm afraid it still doesn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. I'm supporting principle, but I'm abstaining because it's just wrong.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Miss White.
Abstain.
Thank you. Chairman, the result of the vote for motion 3 is 23 for, nobody against, and 7 abstaining.
That's carried. Then we move on straightforward motion 4. Can you take the roll, please, Tara?
Yes, Chairman, as before, members, starting with Councillor Bamford, please.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bassinger?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Miss Beale?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
4.
Councillor Boyce? Councillor Boyce?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channer?
4.
Councillor Jewett?
Abstain.
Councillor Durham?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards?
4.
Ms. Fleming?
4.
Councillor Fluker?
4.
Councillor Harker?
Abstain.
Councillor Hurd?
4.
Councillor Helm?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Hull?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis?
4.
Councillor Keys?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan?
4, please, Tara.
Thank you. Councillor Mays?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Morley?
4.
Councillor Morris?
Definitely 4.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn?
4.
Councillor Shaughnessy?
4.
Siddle?
4.
Councillor Skeens?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp?
I can actually say 4 myself, Tara. I don't need somebody whispering in my ear to tell them to abstain. Turn your microphones off if you're getting coaching members.
Thank you. Councillor Stilts?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
4.
Councillor Mrs Thompson.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you. And Councillor Miss White.
Abstain, and it's my own decision to abstain. I haven't had to speak to anybody else.
Thank you. Chairman, the results of the vote for motion 4 are 24 for, nobody against and 6 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. That motion is carried also. We now, I think, don't have the need for agenda item 12. Mr. Quelch, is this correct?
That's right, Chairman. Can I just make an observation as well that I hope will be helpful? Obviously now there is no membership of Joint Standards Committee. All members have been removed. So for the July meeting, the two groups will have to put forward their nominations. Although political balance doesn't apply, we've got to try and follow the principles according to the resolution, giving no group a majority. My calculations mean with a membership of 8, the Conservative group have 4 nominations, the Independent group have 3, and the council must put in 1 non-aligned member. Now, the non-aligned membership is not a group, but the council has to put a non-aligned member on JSC.
Mr. Quelch, thank you for your advice, but I think the determination of this should go to the relevant parties because it doesn't form part of, although it makes sense what you're saying, I don't think it's appropriate at this time because I remember the advice that we had last May that a non-aligned person had no right to a seat on any committee. So I want that to be established, that non-aligned members do have a right. So if we can leave your advice for the time being for the Councillor Hurd and Councillor Fluker and Councillor Morris, Lagan and myself to sort out.
Chairman, that's a really valid point you said. If I can just come in 1 second before we move on, because Councillor Fluker was saying and spouting so much about the non-aligned, whereas you were absolutely right. They haven't had any representation until now, and we've agreed that they should be a representation. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, but only on, as I understand it, only so far on the Joint Standards Committee. Anyway, can we move on? As the
longest serving non-aligned councillor, I think that's got to be me, guys, isn't it?
Well, you're the leader of the non-aligned group, Councillor Morris.
Yeah, yeah, but you're not in my group because I don't have you. I'm not having you on my group, Bob. You're too corrupt.
Yeah, if you say so, Councillor Morris. That sounds a bit libelous, but there's no point in chasing you for libel.
Sue me.
What's the point?
Exactly. You know, it's the truth. You like to discuss that.
What
you brought the council to dispute?
What I'm confirming now is agenda item 12 will not. There's no need for that, and we won't be having it. And Mr. Quelch, that was correct, wasn't it?
No need for what?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman. There is no need now for agenda item 12.
Right. Thank you. Then we go on to agenda item 8. Minutes of meetings of the council. To note that since the last council meeting up till Monday the 15th of June, council agenda, the following committees have met, and to receive any questions in accordance with council committee procedure rule 6.2. Is there any questions under 6.2? Right. Then Tara, has any member indicated to vote?
No one's indicated they wish to speak, Chairman.
Agenda item 9, questions in accordance with procedure rule 6.3, which notice has been given. I'm advised that there's no such questions. We now go to agenda item 10, Bradwell B project, stage 1 consultation.
Chairman.
Councillor Channer, you're leaving the meeting?
Yes, I'm just, can Tara confirm that I'm hanging up now?
Yes, Chairman, I can confirm that Councillor Mrs Channer has now left the meeting.
Oh, she's still on my screen. She must have frozen.
Chairman,
right.
Chairman, I also have a non-pecuniary interest, as I already declared. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Councillor
will be remaining.
In a moment, I will call on the Leader of the Council to present this item. A reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn following the Leader of the Council's presentation. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I hand over to the officers, can I thank Georgina Button and Gavin Kingsnorth and their teams for the enormous amount of work that's gone into this. We've had a lot of push for Bradwell B to meet deadlines. I know that they've been extended because of the health emergency, but nevertheless, they have got this report together. It's a great tribute to everybody that's made a contribution, and not least of all the officers from Essex County Council, as it's a joint report. So, Chairman, with that, I'll defer to the Director of Strategy, SPG, Strategy, Performance and Governance. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. I don't need to tell members what an important issue the proposed development of Bradwell B nuclear power station is for Malden District Council and the residents of the district. Given the importance of this issue, I've asked officers to present some further detail on the report, which they'll be doing following my introduction. This report seeks endorsement to a recommended response to the Stage 1 consultation relating to the proposed Bradwell B power station proposals, as set out in the appendices of this report. The Joint Member Bradwell Board made a recommendation that a joint consultation response be provided, representing the views of both Malden District Council and Essex County Council. And the board also endorsed the specific response now recommended to Council. The joint response has also been considered by the corporate governance the Council's Bradwell B Power Station Working Group. Accordingly, following collaborative work between each authority, the recommended joint response is before Council for its approval. Before handing over to officers, though, I wanted to highlight the context of the consultation. Malden District Council are a consultee in this process, and as such will not be determining the outcome of the application process. The proposed development of the Bradwell B nuclear power station is considered a nationally significant infrastructure project. Nationally significant infrastructure projects are covered by the Planning Act 2008, which advises the Secretary of State that any decision starts with relevant national planning policies. This is different to the legislative basis for planning applications under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, which starts on the basis that decisions are made in accordance with the development plan. National policy documents therefore provide the key basis for decision making on planning applications for development consent orders for nuclear power stations. And these national policies are the overarching National Policy Statement for Energy, July 2011, and the National Policy Statement for Nuclear Power Generation, July 2011, MPS EN6. MPS EN6 explains that there is an urgent need for nuclear power stations and that nuclear power forms an important element of the strategy towards achieving a more decarbonised, secure and diversified electricity sector by 2050. It also identifies Bradwell B as one of the 8 potentially suitable sites for a nuclear power station in England and Wales before the end of 2025. MPSN EN1 confirms that all planning applications for nuclear power stations shall be assessed on the basis that the government has demonstrated that there is a need for this infrastructure. Malden District Council's local development plan, adopted in July 2017, has only one policy in reference to a new nuclear power station. Policy D4 states that the council will strongly support the principle of the development of new nuclear power station at Bradwell-on-Sea. This is the policy context in which the consultation response has been developed. Not on the principle of whether there should be a development, as that's already established in national policy, but on the basis of commenting on the proposals that have been brought forward. In developing the consultation response, officers have looked to provide responses that seek to maximise the socio-economic benefits of the project and minimise the negative impact of the proposals. The response is based on the consultation document provided by BRB as part of the public consultation. The level of detail in the consultation document has meant that the response is necessarily high level, often pointing out where additional information will be required, highlighting particular sensitivities and areas requiring significant further work. This consultation is stage 1 of a 2-stage consultation process, and more detail will be provided at stage 2, and that will be the formal statutory element of the consultation as part of the DCO process. I'll now hand over to Georgina Button and Gavin Kingsnorth, who will provide further details on the response itself. Georgina.
Thank you, Paul. To add to just to what Paul has just shared with you, and to in some way just reiterate some of that. So in 2010, the government announced that Bradwell was one of the 8 sites it considered suitable in principle for the siting of a new nuclear power station. And as Paul said, within the local development plan, it does state in policy D4, renewable and low carbon energy generation, that there is support from the council in principle. In the joint response, we recognise that the development's potential importance at a local, regional and national level, and that the council supports the government's aim of sustainable development, mitigating climate change and, of course, achieving good design. It also states in the response that the council will seek to maximise the benefits from the proposals whilst also seeking to avoid or minimise potential negative impacts. Compensatory measures will be sought where appropriate, and a positive lasting legacy from the development is considered essential if it is to become an example of sustainable development. To progress this work, the council has commenced the development plan document to address the development needs potentially arising from the Bradwell redevelopment. Now, in the terms of the development consent order process, the project is at stage 1 pre-application. It's a non-statutory public consultation, which, as you can see, is taking place this year. It's the first stage of a 2-stage process of pre-application consultation, as Paul has already said. Stage 2 next year will see a statutory consultation carried out and will publish preferred options alongside detailed assessments and priority stages and strategies. After the pre-application consultation, BRB will then decide whether to proceed and submit the development consent application to the Planning Inspectorate. At this point, unresolved issues can be raised through representatives to the Planning Inspectorate, and at this point the Council will be required to submit a local impact report. The Planning Inspectorate then will produce a report for the Secretary of State for decision, and this is due to take place the following year in 2022. In terms of the Council's governance structure, officers are engaging with the Bradwell B member group, the joint member Bradwell board, which includes representatives from Essex County Council and brings reports to Council for decisions. In the joint response report brought to Council today, you will hopefully see the level of work officers have achieved in a short time and in unprecedented circumstances. The development consent pre-application is a lengthy process, and in the next 18 months is going to be both fast-paced and certainly an intense amount of work that will require us to have an informed vision and a clear view of what we do want and don't want for the district. I'm now going to hand over to Gavin Kingsnorth, our Development Consent Order Technical Lead, to take you through the joint response in more detail.
Thank you, Georgina, and good afternoon, members. If I just commence the presentation. The report now before Council summarises the proposals that that are the subject of the current stage 1 consultation, and I now plan to take you through key components of the proposal. The slides I will show you have been taken directly from BRB's consultation material, and so you may have seen them before. This slide shows the main development site as outlined in red. Members will see that the site is very large, a total of some 230 hectares. It is located to the south and east of the decommissioned Bradwell A power station, highlighted here on the plan. The northern boundary extends along the Blackwater estuary until it meets the Orthona community and the Chapel of St Peter's on the Wall. It then follows the north of East End Road to the east of Bradwell on the Sea Village, and then touches upon Waterside Road before it then returns back to the Blackwater estuary to the east of Bradwell Village. The site sits within an environmentally sensitive area valued for its landscape, history and importance for ecology. The site impacts nationally and internationally important designations for nature, and St Peter's Chapel is of national importance as a Grade 1 listed building. The estuarine landscape is valued by both the local community and visitors to the area, with the public footpath along the sea wall often used. Bradwell A is a landmark in the landscape, seen from far afield, both from leisure craft enjoying the Blackwater and from the land both within the Malden District and from neighbouring authorities to the north. The former Bradwell Bay airfield is also part of the valued history of the site, and the main runway can be seen from this slide. This slide is an aerial view taken from the west of the site looking east. It shows only part of the main site, but is included to illustrate the massive scale and extent of the site and the character of the area. The former airfield is clearly seen, and the RAF War Memorial is also evident, and Trusses Road apparent, with the current access road to Bradwell A on the left. The former airfield control tower can also be seen in the mid-distance to the right. This slide is a 3D computer-generated image taken from BRB's fly-through, which is available on its website. It is a similar direction from the previous slide, looking from the west to east, with Trusses Road to the right and Bradwell A to the left. The image illustrates the main proposals for the permanent power station on the site. The 2 reactor buildings and associated turbine halls are shown in the centre. When fully operational, the station would generate or produce 2.2 gigawatts of electricity, enough to power around 4 million homes. This slide also shows the intention to site the power station further inland than Bradwell A. This has been influenced by the ecological sensitivity of the estuary, and also the flood risks associated with benefits associated with siting on higher land. The existing flood defences along the estuary will not be affected, and the proposals include standalone flood defences around the power station. This image also shows BRB's decision to use hybrid cooling towers rather than direct cooling from the estuary. This again has been driven by the ecological sensitivities of the estuary, including the need to avoid significant changes in water temperature from direct cooling. BRB expresses a preference for circular cooling towers, and these are shown on the image. The reactor buildings would be the largest and tallest buildings on the site, up to 60 metres in height, and would be prominent in the landscape. Cooling towers would be a similar height with broader width and diameter. They would have a greater impact than Bradwell A due to the scale and number of buildings, and would be visible locally, both locally and further afield within the Malden District and beyond. Mersey Island and other communities to the north of the Blackwater will have a clear view of the proposed power station. This slide shows the indicative layout of the power station in plan form. The proposed standalone flood defences are perhaps more clearly shown, enveloping the power station site. The proposed main access from Waterside Road can also be seen, which would avoid the need for traffic to use Trusses Road, as is the current access to Bradwell A. The power station plans to be operational for a minimum period of 60 years. During that time, the consultation predicts approximately 900 permanent jobs, with a further 1,000 jobs during periods of outage for servicing and maintenance. This would be a strong positive for the district's economy. I will now move on to addressing the construction stage of the proposals. Whilst there are no firm details in the consultation, the overall message is clear. It will be a massive undertaking over many years. The construction period is expected to be between 9 to 12 years, and approximately 6 million tonnes of construction materials are expected to be required. Marine transport is seen as a major component to supplying the site, with a consultation indicating that at least 50% of the bulk materials would arrive by sea. On site, whilst the plan currently on screen shows proposals for land restoration in green for landscaped areas and ecological benefit, this area of the site would be required during the construction period for construction equipment and plant, particularly to the west of Waymarks River, as shown here. Soil storage and redistribution is indicated on the land to the south and east as part of the stage 1 consultation, highlighted here. To make use of marine transport, landing facilities will be required, and the consultation proposes up to 2 facilities, with a preference indicated for beach landing facilities. A permanent landing facility is shown to the west of Bradwell A, but during the construction period, a second is shown to the east, approximately here, to serve the main construction area. This slide illustrates BRB's proposals for a beach landing facility, which is preferred over more substantial options involving jetty structures. It shows a landing platform on a shorebed around which delivery barges could offload during high tide. A trestle bridge would then bridge over the existing flood defence to the construction site on shore. The maximisation of sustainable transport is a key aim for the project, as the more freight that can be accommodated by marine or rail, the less will need to be accommodated on the highway. This underlies the council's stress placed on a well-developed and robust sustainable transport strategy prior to the discussions on details on highway proposals. BRB has identified constraints associated with rail transport, but the councils are seeking a thorough assessment of all options to drive down potential freight traffic on roads. There will, however, remain a need for a substantial amount of road traffic on the highway. The consultation estimates between 500 to 700 two-way HGV movements a day. This is a substantial number of HGV movements and will be challenging for the highway network to accommodate. There will be a need to move freight between the primary road network and the main construction site, and the consultation proposal sets out some initial proposals for routes and options. During the early works stage of the proposals, which is normally within the first 3 years, and when major improvements would not have been carried out on the highway, there is a proposal for a HGV route travelling via the A12 and the 414, the B1018, 1018, and then travelling eastwards to the site. It would then return via the same route, but branch off south, coming to the B1012 and the A312 before joining the A130 via Southwood and Ferrers. During the main construction period, the southern route is the preferred route, using the A130, A132 route with a number of options considered within the Malden district. Broadly, with a blue route following the existing larger roads with potential improvements, and a red route further south using less well-trafficked routes and longer new routes. Support for the blue route is considered appropriate, and this in-principle support includes consideration of highway improvements and potential bypasses on the blue route. In order to manage HGV movements on the highway network, the consultation proposes freight management facilities to hold HGVs, so flows on the network can be managed. The consultation illustrates 3 potential search areas, with it likely that only one will be needed within the Malden district. The size of a freight management facility is identified as approximately 10 to 15 hectares to accommodate between 100 to 150 HGVs. This slide shows the 2 search areas within the Malden district, covering a large area between Cold Norton and Mayland. The construction stage will not only need a large quantity of construction material, it will also need a very large workforce. During construction, it is estimated that there could be between 9,100 and 10,600 workers needed on site, of which 3,000 are expected to come from the local area. Some workers will be home-based, but many others will need accommodation. The proposals therefore includes temporary workers accommodation close to the main development site to provide approximately 4,500 bed spaces. This slide shows sites that are being considered by BIB with its preference for site 1 with a potential to expand into site 2. Even with this large temporary workers accommodation campus, it is expected that the scale of the project will impact on the Malden district housing market. As with freight, there will also be a need to promote sustainable transport for the movement of workers. BRB will be assuming that some home-based workers will be prepared to travel to work for up to 90 minutes, and so there is some potential for travel from some distance away. One part of the sustainable approach to the movement of workers is the provision of park and ride sites, and this slide shows the broad locations being considered by BRB for park and ride sites. These sites would pick up car-borne workers with onward bus travel to the main site. This would reduce the number of vehicles on the highway network. 3 sites are being considered within the Malden district, 2 of which are the same search areas for the freight management facility, and a 3rd to the west of Malden. I hope that this presentation has adequately summarised the main components of the power station proposals that are subject to this consultation and raised some of the topics that the councils will need to address going forward to maximise the benefits and minimise the negative effects of the scheme. May I finish by confirming that the stage 1 consultation by BIB has come at an early stage of the Bradwell B power station schemes development and the development consent order process. The consultation is welcomed as an introduction to the emerging proposals and will support future engagement between BRB and the council and other stakeholders going forward as more robust strategies, detailed baseline assessments and detailed impact assessments are prepared. The recommended joint council response to the stage 1 consultation will provide a firm basis for future pre-application discussions with BRB as the project progresses beyond this early stage of consultation and towards the statutory stage 2 consultation.
Need to unmute yourself, Bob.
Bob, you're muted. I thought there was only you and me here, Nick.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kingsnorth, Ms. Button. Leader.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you very much. I just wanted to take, before we have a full debate, I just want to echo the words of the officers, really, that we're not deciding the planning application here, we're deciding the response. And of course, this is the non-statutory response, but nevertheless, Chairman, I'd like to put the members in their comfort zone if I can. This seemed to accelerate very, very quickly towards us as members. So I would propose, Chairman, that we add another recommendation Roman 3, that members are regularly consulted with at the start of the DCO Stage 2 consultation process, which is the statutory consultation. And I believe that members should be involved right at the beginning of this so that we can understand and see what is in the statutory consultation. Otherwise, Chairman, to start the debate, I would propose that we agree these two recommendations and the third one that I've just proposed. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Tara, I don't know whether it would be helpful for members to have these recommendations up on the screen while we go through the debate. But until we make a decision on that, would you like to tell me who the first speaker should be after the leader?
Yes, of course, Chairman. We can put the recommendations up if you want. That's no problem. The first speaker is Councillor Swain, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. Various comments. Firstly, initially, Mr. Dodson mentioned that it was a joint thing with Malden District and County Council. He didn't mention how closely Chelmsford might have been involved, although of course there is mention in the report of difficulties, particularly around Danbury, and of course implications at Southwood and Ferrers. As a general point, I'm concerned that some of the wording of the report tends to confuse statements that are effectively made by BRB, or which are, should we say, government statements, with what the council's comments are on the situation. They tend to get confused. On the specific point about the 90-minute radius for people travelling to this site, I think it grossly underestimates traffic problems at that 90-minute radius. And therefore, I think it overestimates the willingness of people to drive for that time. The implication, of course, is that a much larger encampment may be required and greater pressure on local housing. One could foresee that a lot of residents might well decide to move and rent their houses out to people working at the site. One cannot be impressed when reading the documentation by the officers that have gone into this, how destructive and devastating the traffic will be on the road network, damage to infrastructure, as well as impact on communities and on the environment, as well as further afield. To my mind, this is symptomatic of the lack of groundwork that's been done on this project and should have been done at a much earlier stage. There are very many requirements for information, modelling and so on in the report, which if they had been done earlier, might have not led to Bradwell being picked on as a site at all. I say picked on in a colloquial sense because it seems to me the decision to pick on Bradwell was not a thoroughly thought out idea in the first place. With the extent of the investigations and modelling that seem to be required and information gathering, there seem to be two possibilities here. Whether we could request or require some important elements of that to be undertaken before any planning application is considered, or whether we could engage many of those requirements for information as conditions in a planning application when it comes to council. I
don't want to cut you off, but there's a lot of members want to speak.
Yes.
You've asked a lot of questions, and we will not have the the final decision planning wise?
No. My last point is I would like to suggest an amendment, a small amendment to wording in one paragraph at some stage, either now or later in the proceedings.
Well, if you give it to us now, Mr. Kingsnorth can answer hopefully one or two of your questions and give his views on your amendment.
Well, the amendment that I would like to put to members is on page 28, paragraph 3.5.5. And it would be to delete some of the wording.
I would, Mr. Kingsnorth.
I would like to delete the phrase or clause confirms council's support for the development and.
Mr. Kingsnorth, would you like to respond to the questions that are in there?
Thank you, Chairman. I think one of the issues was raised about the 90 minutes travel time, and I think I'd try to make it clear that that would be an outside limit that's assumed for construction workers, and it's based on construction workers' willingness to travel to work, but it isn't assuming that everybody at that distance would want to travel to that work. The BRB is going to have a gravity model, which effectively, the closer you get to the site, the more likely they believe people would travel to the site. So for home workers that may well be living 90 minutes away, there's assumption that some of them may well travel to site. But for people that aren't living locally and would need to find accommodation within the Malden district, either through temporary accommodation or buying a permanent house, they're assuming a much closer distance of 60 minutes. So that hopefully highlights on that point. I think in terms of the impact on the traffic and environment, I think Councillor Swain has correctly identified that we're very concerned about the lack of evidence and detail. And I think I can give some reassurances that before an application is submitted to the to the planning inspectorate for a development consent order, there will need to be that evidence submitted. There will be a requirement for a formal environmental impact assessment to establish the baseline against which impacts will be assessed, and that will be a very robust and technical exercise. So effectively, I agree there that the consultation has come a little bit early to have the real evidence behind it, and hence the response that we're recommending is very much asking for that before we commit ourselves to any view. On the specifics of the paragraph, I'm struggling to find that. I think from the reference, is that a reference in the Appendix A, and therefore, be useful to provide some context, because I think some of the wording might not be significant, but in saying there's in principle support, I just haven't been able to review that section, so perhaps I could come back to it later.
Thank you. I have Councillor Mays now, please.
Chairman, I did ask if there was what the impact would be before Councillor Mays.
Well, I'm sorry, I've just got the list of names in front of me. I'll put you on the list.
I'll give way.
Councillor Mays.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My question is actually around the decommissioning of the development, what the afterlife is of the decommissioned reactor in 60 years' time, and how much additional time on top of that the site will actually take to decommission. So we're not just looking at the building of it and then its life and then its afterlife, and none of that seems to have been addressed either in any of the documents that I've seen, and I'm very concerned about the total infrastructure that goes alongside this, both before, during its commissioning, whilst it is actually a reactor, and then during its decommissioning, we just don't have that infrastructure, both within this district, but also in Chelmsford, and obviously going around to South Woodham, which is part of Chelmsford district as well. And I'm very, very concerned about that element of it. Just not enough information for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Then Miss Councillor Stamp, please.
Chairman, I just wanted to know, the gentleman, Mr. Kingsnorth, said about the impact on the Malden housing market. Does he have any statistics for that? Anything to back that up? Is it positive, negative? Are we going to be left in 10 years with loads more houses? What?
Before I come to you, Mr. Kingsnorth, again, I'll gather 2 or 3 members at a time, and perhaps you can answer their questions at the same time. Councillor Skeens.
Yes, of course, I've grown up with the Bradwell A, with all the concerns around that. But this is not, Bradwell A is nothing compared to this. It's the size of it. Well, I'm not obviously no expert. It does seem unnecessarily large, and it just really worries me how big this is. And it seems like and the physical size, 60 meters, 4 buildings, 60 meters high. I just have serious reservations about the whole thing, especially because Rolls-Royce only recently announced that they're going to be having these micro nuclear power units for a fraction of the cost online by 2029. I think we all need to keep in our minds that this may not be necessary. And there are also other political considerations which I won't go into here, but I just wanted to express my deep concern about the massive scale of this project. It seems to me that it doesn't need to be so massive and so destructive. Thank you.
Mr. Kingsnorth, there's several questions in the last 3 speakers, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think on the first point about the if you like, legacy post operation, I think the consultation does lack detail, and it's a part that I think we need more detail on in terms of the decommissioning. Although I do appreciate that the planning inspectorate and Secretary of State might not require as much as we like. I think this is a sort of a national issue that members might be aware that this is being looked at by government in terms of finding a more sustainable long-term solution for nuclear waste. But that isn't necessarily something that we're consulted on at the moment. And obviously the Office of Nuclear Regulation would have a lot of say in terms of the safety of such events. In terms of the local housing market, the consultation is very poor in terms of details. There are no proposals for permanent housing and only light references to potential impacts on the market, on the housing market within Malden. There is a reference to a housing fund that may be provided by BIB in the future to try and address any negative impacts. And as officers, we do have concerns that we have a relatively low amount of private rented units or just general accommodation, whether that's tourist or otherwise, to accommodate a very large number of workers. So it is very much a concern that we will be looking to have detailed discussion with BRB going forward. In terms of the scale of the power station, to some extent, it is what it is. It is a proposal for if you like, more conventional nuclear power station, and not a one for a micro unit. So I think it's something that it's, we have to deal with it as presented to us. It's not that we can say that we would like something smaller. All we can do is try and use this process to influence what we can, so that the design has much less impact in the landscape than it might otherwise. But inevitably, at that scale, it will be highly prominent and have I would say, an adverse impact on the landscape.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn. Councillor Nunn.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in looking at the power station in the round, I'm conscious of the potential economic advantages of this development. But as we've heard from the presentation, we're looking at a 60-year legacy. When we say a 60-year legacy, even after that duration, it's my view that some of that legacy will be irreversible. So in looking at the current proposals at this current stage, there are 4 issues that I'd like to raise, please, Chairman. The first is that I feel, and I'm not alone here because I've had this raised by some of some of the electorate in my ward, that there is a feeling of undue haste about this, both in terms of members and member involvement and member consultation, but particularly about public consultation. And I'm concerned that the current lockdown and the current emergency situation that we find ourselves in has had a detrimental impact on meaningful consultation. That's the first issue. The second issue is that I'm concerned about the changing economic relationship across the world as a result of the current emergency, and how that may or may not impact on our partnerships in developing Bradwell B. The third issue is the impact on infrastructure. And when you look at the changes that are being proposed to the road system, to lorry parks, to car parks, to train system, these are irreversible changes. And the fourth and final issue, and you won't be surprised to hear me saying this, Chairman, is the impact on our unique environmental and historical context of the Dengie Peninsula, and particularly Bradwell, which has an amazing story that starts during the Roman period and goes right through, as we've heard, to the Second World War. So they're the 4 areas of concern that I wanted to raise this afternoon. Thank you.
Councillor Shaughnessy. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Sorry, Chairman, I was unmuted. Sorry, apologies. As I started to say, I agree with all the points that councillors have made so far, and indeed Councillor Nunn has gone before me in talking about this consultation period, which is of huge concern that it's about to stop in a couple of weeks' time potentially, when the public haven't had haven't properly been able to air their views, and I think there should still be eventually when it's able to happen, some group meetings about this, in village halls, etc., as the intention originally was supposed to be. I think that should go ahead. That concerns me greatly, as it does Councillor Nunn. And also, I would just like to remind everybody, I think Mr. Dobson touched on it at the beginning of his talk, that the principle of the need for nuclear power and the potential for Bradwell as a site is a matter for central government. And so as such, it's really sort of outside the scope of this consultation. So all the details laid out today are somewhat irrelevant at the moment and may lead people to think that it is a done deal, which of course it is not. It will be up to central government whether this goes ahead or not. So I think we are in danger of giving local people the wrong impression here. And, and could I just add that Chelmsford City Council have also made a report on this and nobody's mentioned it yet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shaughnessy. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to back up what some of the other councillors have said. One of the things that the Conservative government is very keen on doing now is to ensure that road improvements and infrastructure are done before any kind of construction like this. So I believe that we need to push for that and ensure that we get that infrastructure before any spades are put in the ground. One of the things that's been in the press recently is about the potential new train line that's linking Malden to Witham. My view is if we are going to have park and ride as part of this proposal, we should try and look at ensuring that park and ride is developed within Malden, so we can then run a shuttle bus service and use that facility to the train station at Hatfield, Peveril or Witham. So we are immediately getting benefits to this. Again, I'm with Councillor Skeens. This is outdated technology. Rolls-Royce have been announcing these small nuclear plants. We need to ensure that we get the message across that hopefully the government will review some of this and come up with the right proposals. What I'd also like to do is to thank Georgina Button and her team for all the great work that they've done in producing these documents and producing these reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kingsnorth, Ms. Button, do you want to comment on the last few speakers at all?
Yeah, if I could just go first and respond to the question in relation to how the consultation has been carried out. Rightly so, you had the same concerns as we did, and we pointed it out when the coronavirus pandemic started. And went to BRB and said, you know, how are you going to respond to this? Are you going to stop the consultation and pick it up at a more suitable time? How are you going to make sure that it is accessible? Bearing in mind, we signed off, the council supported the statement of community consultation, which set out their approach in how they were going to consult with the public. Now, because of the pandemic, their response was that they extended the consultation from 12 weeks to 17 weeks. And what they've done is adapt their offering. So there's obviously the telephone surgeries, which I know, you know, some people have had some good experiences and bad experiences with that. And there's also the online materials on the website and other email and printed materials, newsletters and so on that they have produced. Now, when we've questioned it and said, well, actually, you know, is that enough? Is that right? They have come back to say that the National Infrastructure Planning Association have come back and said that they recognise their efforts as positive examples of responding to the pandemic. And also, what I did was question, well, how many responses have they had thus far? How does that compare to the other consultations that they've carried out? And they've said, you know, with just less than a week to go, they've had over 1,000 people and organisations, obviously including some of the ones we talked about, have already provided formal feedback to the consultation through the multiple channels that they've got. Now, comparing that to Wilver in Anglesey or Hinkley Point C in Somerset, or indeed Sizewell, Wilver at this stage had 424 feedback responses. Hinkley Point C had 700. And Moorside in West Cumbria 750 and Sizewell 1,300. Now, they all consultations always see a spike in the last week. They're pushing that through radio advertisement, which they've never done before, to try and promote that there is still some time to respond. And they have promised us that they will, before they proceed to stage 2, will look at the results of the consultation to see if they need to indeed do that again or do something differently. I think the other issue here as well is it's just pointing out at this very early stage as it is a non-statutory consultation. So there isn't really anybody expecting this consultation to be carried out in a formal way. So they are able to come back and say, We have willingly consulted, we've provided multiple channels in which people can engage. Unfortunately, yes, there was a pandemic, but we did still receive a significant or a comparable number of responses. So whether if we like that or not, I think it's that they've got justification there and they are happy with how they have conducted it thus far. What we have done jointly with Essex County Council is submitted a letter to the Chief Executive on the 23rd of April, making it clear that we had those concerns and that we felt that needs to be reflected in the statement of community consultation. Now, that letter will also be seen by the inspectorate at the point of examination. We found out we can't do that now, but they will look at those concerns that we raised at this stage at the point of examination.
Thank you, Ms. Button. Mr. Kingsnorth, did you want to add anything, or can I go on? I've still got several members wish to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to come back on a few points that have been made by councillors. I think Councillor Siddle's comment that it would be better if the road improvements be done before construction begins. I think that is eminently sensible, but I think the technical studies will have to conclude whether or not there will be, significant harm to stop them starting. So I think that's something that I agree with the sentiment. It's just it'll come down to the technical appraisals to see what harm's caused in terms of those traffic flows, which we do not know at the moment. Also, in terms of Councillor Nunn mentioning the infrastructure and irreversible changes, I think there I would comment that much of the infrastructure, like the freight management centres and park and ride sites, may well be temporary infrastructure. So what we as the council need to do is make sure that the infrastructure that's permanent is a positive legacy for the district and not a negative one. I think I share Councillor Nunn's view that we have a unique environment, and therefore, we will be doing our best to ensure that uniqueness remains intact.
Thank you, Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just wanted to thank Gavin for the presentation, which was excellent and very informative, and for all the hard work that the other officers have done. I was on the Bradwell working group. It was one of my first virtual meetings, and I felt I didn't really put all my points across there. The emphasis was mainly on transportation. So I just really want to ask the officers now to reassure me that a lot of the concerns and views are addressed in this response. I know that you, Gavin, has said negative responses have tried to be avoided, and you don't really want to put views across, but it is the concerns that I want to make sure are addressed in some way. Because I live in Tollsbury, which is directly opposite this site, and this will be a massive blot on the landscape. We have Essex Wildlife site, we have an RSPB site, we have a glorious sea wall, which will overlook this. So I'm concerned about the visual impact of this. I realise, they are constructing something to meet a certain need, but does it really, really have to be this large? Because it is going to be seen for a massive distance away. The hills in Great Braxton and Tiptree are going to see this as they come in to the area. So my other concerns are the accommodation site as well. What sort of impact that's going to have on the visual site from Tollsbury side, the impact on residential boating, the marine ecology and the oyster beds. I know you've mentioned the cooling towers have been done on the basis of taking into consideration ecology, but because of that, we've got to look at two massive structures. So these are concerns that I want to make sure are put across in some way. and not just you saying, well, we haven't got the details, so we can't make any comments. And the heritage sites is another thing. A lot of the heritage sites are going to be badly affected by this, so I'm concerned about that too. Also, what's happened with the DPD planning document, and are we, in our second response, going to have to do a joint response with ECC, or can we actually ask to do the stage 2 response on our own? Thank you very much, Chairman, for that.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan. Councillor Lagan, you still with us?
Yeah, sorry,
I
Chair.
see several members have left.
With my technology. Yeah, thanks very much. I'm not going to go over a lot of the previous comments that members have made, which I totally agree with most of them. But there's just a couple of points that I want to raise formally. On page 26, 3.3 on planning policy 3.35, Paul at the beginning said it's a consultation process, which I get. I know it's a decision for national policy, it's not for local policy to be made, and we are only being consulted on this throughout the whole programme. But I am concerned that back in 2017, the council will strongly support the principle of development of the power station at Bradwell. That was based in 2017, based on outdated figures and information about electricity uses, which has since declined. So I know this councillor certainly doesn't, as an independent person, support in principle anything to be done on the Dengie Peninsula. The second point I'd like to raise as well is on point 6 of the report, implications, where we talk about impact on customers. It says it could have significant benefits and impact on Malden residents and businesses. I think it was raised earlier on, I think by Councillor Siddle, that the recommendation is with the debate today, is to accept the officer's recommendations. Well, I find it a little bit short-sighted that the impact on customers could have significant benefits without the massive destruction and overdevelopment and loss of what we actually have, of which my previous members have mentioned. And having worked on massive construction sites across the world, with my own eyes, seen the destruction that it causes. So I have great reservations in supporting a lot of what's in here, although I'm also appreciative of the detail that the officers have gone to, and especially Tim Hauser with his marvellous, as always, document on the heritage down there. It's the most important decision I've ever had the opportunity to contribute to, and I don't want us to get it wrong by selling the silver too early. Because once we move on this, everything from the infrastructure to the impact of migrant workers, we won't have seen anything like this in our time. So I'm very much against standing for it in a positive way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, I've got 2 more speakers, I think, Tara, unless you've got some more. Councillor Fleming and then Councillor Morris. Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. My question was for Mr. Kingsnorth. I wanted to ask him, how much detail he looked into Chelmsford City Council's plans for new housing around South Woodham Ferrers when he was, preparing the consultation. That's my concern. There's an awful lot of housing going in around South Woodham. The roads are insufficient at present. I just, wanted to find out how much detail he'd looked into. Thank you.
Councillor Morris, I think you're the final speaker. Then I've got notice of a recorded vote required, which is okay.
Sorry, Chair. Can I? Sorry, Chair.
Wait a minute. Let me finish. And a notice of an amendment to remove some words, which we'll take when I go back to the leader. Councillor Morris.
I was going to request a recorded vote, so thank you for that. Councillor Langan has pretty much covered what I was going to say, but I'll make it short and sweet. It's dangerous, it's dirty, and it's awful. As Councillor Langan said, page 26, 3.3.5, the council will strongly support the principle of the development of a new nuclear power station at Bradwell-on-Sea. That isn't anything that I want to be involved with. I don't support this one bit. We shouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
No predetermination there then.
No, we shouldn't be doing it, should we? It's not predetermination.
Mr. Kingsnorth, do you want to come back with anything the last few speakers have said before I return to Councillor Fluker?
Chairman, yes, if I can just pick up on a few of the sort of questions from the councillors. In terms of, if I've taken in reverse order, Councillor Fleming said, to what extent are we aware of or taken into account the proposals around Southwood and Ferrers within the Chelmsford City Council area? I can reassure Councillor Fleming that I've been involved in many discussions with Chelmsford City Council and fully aware of their consultation response at their meeting on the 6th of June. Also with Essex County Council Highways, we've been looking into the background to Southwood and Ferrers expansion, and so that development has very much been part of our minds, and recognising that there's constraints beyond the Morden district that will need to be addressed. In terms of Councillor Laggin, I think my main comment is that there will be benefits, but there'll also be disadvantages or impacts that would have on the council. So it's not, it is just one of those planning things where we need to balance the positives against the negatives and come to a balanced view. And that's also the task of the planning inspectorate and the Secretary of State when it gets to them. In terms of the council's position, it is only an in principle support. So therefore, this stage gives us the opportunities, particularly at stage 2 and beyond, to consider the details and then come to a view as to the balance of planning merits at that point. In terms of Councillor Bamford's comments, I certainly can reassure Councillor Bamford that all of the areas that have been raised will be taken into account, and we will have detailed discussions with Bradwell BRB in future to cover all of those areas. They are quite valid and legitimate concerns that we will be addressing in due course. And just as a final comment, I've been searching for Councillor Swain's proposed amendment, but the record of the paragraph I took, even referring to Appendix A, I haven't been able to find it. So perhaps we can. I think
Miss Bird has got that in hand.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you.
I do have one more speaker, which I seem to have missed, and that's Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
She's left.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm having a couple of issues here. I just wanted to say I heartily agree with pretty much everything everyone said, and concern for the district and the environment and the heritage and everything. But can we please remember we can't decide whether this is going to happen or not. That's out of our hands. We can only make sure we get the best out of it we possibly can for the district. And I'd like to thank all the officers and everyone who's worked on this report. I think they've done an excellent job, covered an awful lot. I would ask everyone to endorse it. I think we should have a joint response with County if possible. I do have one question, if I could ask through you, Chairman. If we make any amendments to this, does that stop it being a joint response with Essex? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Perhaps we'll pick that up later. Now, as I said, Tara, have you got that Councillor Swain amendment? I think you did indicate on chat to me at one stage that you showed it to me. Was I incorrect?
Chairman, I haven't got the wording of the exact amendment, but I have got the paragraph I can put up if that makes it easier.
Please, that would help. Yeah.
Bear with me, I'll do that now.
Chairman, may I say something? I can't use chat.
Right. Where's this bit?
I think he's talking about this paragraph, Chairman, 3.5.5.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Swain, is that the paragraph you're referring to?
Yes.
And this is within the officer's report, Chairman, just to advise.
And you're, yes, you can't actually make amendments to this because it's the officer's report. Perhaps the leader can pick up on this and
we can't vote for it.
Okay. Well,
you can't
yes,
you can't vote on this, but perhaps the leader will be cognizant of it and take it up.
Okay, can I, Chairman, say what I wanted to do? Referring to Councillor Thompson's point, this really only affects Malden because that paragraph refers to the Malden Council, the council, singular, and it obviously refers to Malden District Council.
Yeah.
My proposal was that to read the consultation response. Welcomes detailed discussion across a wide range of topics, and to take out the phrase confirms the council's in principle support for the development.
Councillor Swain,
I second that.
Councillor Skeens, we cannot change by amendment officers' reports.
Okay.
You'll have to speak to the leader, who will be aware of what you are proposing, and I will leave it to him to come up with either a suggestion or a rejection. Leader, would you like to sum up?
Can I just point out, Chairman, that we've already mentioned what's in the LDP, so it seems quite unnecessary to make a repeat in 355. Thank you.
Yeah, but we can't touch that as members. Councillor
we can vote against it because it's there.
Are you there, leader?
Yes, I am indeed. Chairman, I think just for clarity, can we just, Tara, can you please put this part of the report back on the screen so that I can understand from Councillor Swain what he wants to do, because I might be able to appease him and everybody else probably. So it's 3.5.5. So, Chairman, through you, could I ask Councillor Swain what he wants to do? Remove the words "the council in principle support."
Yes, it's really to follow the consultation response, welcomes detailed discussion, etc., and leaves out the wording before that or in between. So it leaves out confirms council's in principle support for the development and.
Right, the simplest way out of this, Mr. Kingsnorth, would you like to remove those words, or is there a basic principle here?
Chairman, if I can intercede, I don't think we can, because council had previously voted, and that was the stance of council at the time.
Yes, you're quite right.
But surely this is we're now got more detail.
Yeah, material difference, as it were. Leader, I'll hand it back to you, and I won't try and solve this conundrum.
Well, Chairman, I can certainly understand. I can certainly understand where Councillor Swain's coming from, and indeed Councillor Skeen's concerned about this, and quite rightly too, because these comments were picked up in a previous administration, which of course they weren't on the council then. So we are saddled with the local development plan from there's a drop 2017. The report actually says 2107, but anyway, so from 2017 we adopted the local development plan, so we're 3.5 years into that or whatever, and it's quite right. This statement that appears at 3.3.5 is contained within that report, but of course we are due a review. I think we're going to start the review of the local development plan, which we're required to by law. I think probably next year, probably the spring of next year, be about a 12-month process. And I think it's at that time that we need to go to the members and understand what their mood is in relation to these comments around the nuclear power station. But we have to wait until then, because Councillor Dunn's quite right. It's a decision of council. It's been endorsed by council. So we need to unravel that there. But Chairman, I think that's the right and proper place to do this. But, I've listened very carefully to what a lot of members have said about this. And of course, the great opportunity for us to respond is through the statutory consultation, which is the next consultation. And if you can remember, quite some time ago, I proposed another recommendation. So, Tara, can you put the recommendation up? I sent it to you by email. Can you pop that up on the screen? That's your niece and nephew, right? Okay, so that members are regularly consulted with from the start of the DCO stage 2 statutory consultation process, right? So that means when the stage 2 comes along, you know, you'll have your working groups, you'll have your member interaction, you can go to strategy and resources, so that we get total involvement from day one. Because in my mind, we haven't quite got that right because we've been pushed so quickly on this. So I think that's very important, Chairman, and I hope members will support that. But Chairman, I'd also propose that we review the council's position when we review the local development plan. When we do the statutory review of the local development plan, we actually review the decision regarding Bradwell B. I don't know if anyone would be brave enough to second that, but I think that would certainly mean that we can look at it. Bradwell B would understand that we're going to review it, and then we can take it forward from there, Chairman. But other than that, I would ask that you put the 2 recommendations as they appear on the order paper, and also my 2 new recommendations, Chairman, regarding member involvement and a review of the statements regarding the power station when we get to the local development plan review.
Tara, could you make that the 4th one, please, so members can see what they're doing?
I mean, Chairman, in summary, it's very, very important that, you know, when we get to the statutory response, we've brought together all the views of the members, and we make sure that this is, this is reiterated through that process. I think, Chairman, because of the enormity of this piece of the work and the way somebody's quite rightly said, you know, it stretches across outside of our district. We've got highways involved. We've got other things involved. You know, I think we should work very, very closely with Essex County Council on that. But if members are really, really, really unhappy, I mean, we could add a recommendation on that we consider that prior to the commencement of the stage 2 DCO statutory consultation. But I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for members, because we could, of course, visit that later on anyway.
Councillor Swain.
I think I meant as easy as possible for officers.
Without opening this debate again, Councillor Swain and Skeens, that 4th one that the leader's suggesting, would that satisfy you in part?
Yes, given that we can't actually, should we say, amend the report as such, then it's probably as satisfactory a solution as we can get.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay. Thanks for
that. Tara, I'll then put the recommendations, all 4 of those, to the council. Will you start calling the roll, please?
Chairman, can I just clarify in respect of recommendation 4? Is it right? Was statements the right word, or could we just clarify what the statements are?
I think it might be policy, but I think somebody cleverer than me should answer that, and perhaps that means at least the other 30 members. I'm not sure. Not sure if it's policy or it's. If Paul's there, he'll probably tell us.
Council's position.
Yes, well, the council's position.
Is there somebody there?
Council position sounds
right
to me.
Paul. There we go. So let's get that quickly in there. Council's position when the local development plan is reviewed. So, okay, Chairman, over to you.
Right, okay, Tara, thank you for that. Will you now call the roll? Again, it's for the recommendations, against or abstain.
Yes, Chairman, of course. Members, I will call alphabetically, starting with Councillor Bamford, please.
Sorry, Tara, trying to get this. Sorry, I'm not. I just wanted to raise something which I did ask in the chat. In the Appendix A at number 2, it does say that the council support in principle.
Yes, well,
I think that's
we've
what
been through
Swain
that.
didn't want.
We've been through that. That's why
Yeah,
the
but it's
leader
not
has
in the report. It's
suggested
in the actual appendix, Chairman.
that is why the leader has suggested the recommendation for, and Councillor Swain has accepted it.
All right.
So can we move on, Tara, please?
Yes, Chairman. So Councillor Bamford.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bassinger.
Against.
Councillor Beale. Miss Beale.
For.
Councillor
Did you hear that one?
Yes, I got that. Thank you, Councillor Miss Beale.
Here to do mine so we don't get the
Sure.
Bell. Councillor Bell.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs. Chalmers not in there. Councillor Jewett.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
For.
Councillor Fluker.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harker has left the meeting. Councillor Hurd. Councillor Hurd.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Helm.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hull.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Lagan.
Against.
Councillor Mays.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Morris.
Definitely against.
Thank you. Councillor Nunn.
Against.
Against.
Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Skeens.
Against.
Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Stilts.
Against.
Swain.
Against.
Mrs. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Miss White has left. Chairman, the result of that vote is 14 for, 12 against and 1 abstention.
Whoa.
Thank you. That is therefore carried, and we will then move on to agenda item 11, approval to adopt the list of local heritage assets for Bradwell-on-Sea and Tillingham.
Chairman, before you move on, could you just give us a couple of minutes
Mrs. Channer.
to get Mrs. Channer back, please?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's fine. Just bear with us. Thank you.
Cool. Don't forget, Chip. She'll go mad.
We're just contacting her, Chairman. I'm just waiting for her to rejoin. Won't keep you long.
Thank you. Could you turn your video off, Councillor Swain, please?
All right.
Have we got Mrs. Channer back with us, Tara?
Yes, Councillor Boyce, we have Mrs. Channer with us. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Hello, Bob, I'm here.
Then agenda item 11, approval to adopt the list of local heritage assets for Bradwell-on-Sea and Tillingham, found on pages 191 to 244. I will call on the Leader of the Council to present this item. I'll remind you about the chat function. I will then come to you in turn following the Leader of the Council's presentation. And I know we've got Mr. Howson with us to give a report, but Leader.
I can't hear the Leader, Chairman.
No, nor can I.
He's muted.
So, there we go. Thank you very much. So just to recap, we're on page 191 and we're on agenda item 11, which is the approval of the list of local heritage assets for Bradwell and Tillingham. Rather poignant, bearing in mind what we've just discussed. I think we're well rehearsed at receiving these documents, but I'll rehearse again, Chair, say it with just as much warmth as I did the first time, and that was to pay tribute to Mr. Howson, who I think is very much a one-man team at the moment. So well done to him for a fabulous report and the detail, and actually keeping track of all these wonderful heritage assets that are in the district. So, Chairman, I'm sure other people will want to add to that, but I think for brevity, bearing in mind the time, Chairman, I'll give way to Mr. Howson if that's where you're going, and then I'll come back to the recommendation. Thank you.
Right. Is Mr. Howson going to say anything at this stage?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I missed.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you loud and clear.
And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I've just got a 5-minute presentation on the Bradwell and Tillingham local lists. So as you all know, these are lists of historic buildings which fall short of the strict criteria for national listing, but possess local heritage value, meriting some consideration in planning decisions. And preparation of these lists is something encouraged in planning practice guidance. The draft lists for Bradwell and Tillingham were approved for public consultation by Strategy and Resources Committee on the 20th of February 2020. And the documents simply identify and celebrate a really interesting collection of historic buildings. And I'm going to briefly show you a few of the highlights in chronological order. Nice. The oldest of which is the King's Head in Bradwell-on-Sea, which has a recently restored late medieval timber-framed crosswing on the left-hand side of the building. This ancient structure was revealed by a fire in 2014 and was accurately restored following the evidence in the timbers. This is a view of the interior shortly after the fire, and as it looks now, faithfully restored. This is an isometric reconstruction showing the structure of the building and the original medieval timbers in brown and the new oak structure replicating the original in green. Quite a remarkable survival that would be statutory listed if more of it survived the fire. Several of the entries on the lists fall into the category of small Georgian cottages, of which Tile Cottage in Tillingham is a fine example. This was built in 1812 on a slip of roadside waste. It's a relatively unusual survival of a detached cottage, which was originally just one room on the ground floor and one room in the attic. Normally cottages this small were in terraced form. It has a clay-tiled gambrel roof, which is such a characteristic feature of Georgian vernacular buildings in the coastal region of Essex. On the right is an early 20th century photograph illustrating one of the past occupants, Weymouth Nunn Moole, who was a fisherman, wildfowler and longshoreman, all occupations relating to the marshland location. And where possible, the lists have included old photographs like this, most of which have been kindly provided by the local historian Kevin Bruce, who you may know as a former district councillor. Later in the 19th century, the Lord of the Manor of Tillingham, the Dean and Chapter of St Paul's, erected several pairs of cottages with these distinctive Sussex-style tile-hung dormer windows. The best preserved examples of these houses, such as numbers 1 to 3 Brook Road, have been included on the Tillingham list. These cottages were designed by the notable county architect Frederick Chancellor, and this is a little sketch he prepared in 1881 when the cottages were originally proposed. And then among the youngest buildings to be included on the Bradwell list are those from World War II. This was a significant period in Bradwell's history, which saw the whole parish become a military zone. Some significant wartime structures are still standing on what was Bradwell Bay Airfield, including the control tower, which was converted to a house after the war. Now, these buildings are likely to be demolished if the nuclear power station is built, but I think at least inclusion on the local list at least highlights the importance of these military buildings, and if they do have to go, they should be properly recorded. In total, 3 representations were received during the local list public consultation. The owners of Gatehouse in Bradwell submitted the only objection. They objected to the inclusion of their house. This was built in 1836 as a lodge at the entrance to the grounds of the rectory. And it is unfortunately not that well preserved. Its windows are modern. The chimney has very recently been demolished, and the owners are actually about to implement a planning permission to alter the form of the roof. So taking all that into account, the building is now considered insufficiently well preserved to meet the selection criteria, and so has been omitted from the draft list. Bradwell-on-Sea Parish Council suggested several other buildings for inclusion, most of which unfortunately fell short of the selection criteria. Some of them were already Grade 2 listed. However, the proposal to include the group of pillboxes along the sea wall has been incorporated, because while individually the pillboxes are perhaps not that remarkable, as a group they are quite a potent visible reminder of the real threat of invasion posed during World War II. And so the local list for Bradwell-on-Sea has been amended to include these pillboxes as a single entry. And so the recommendation is to adopt the lists, and that will support the council's strategic theme for place by encouraging the protection and improvement of built heritage, which is a valuable component of the local environment.
Thank you, Mr. Howson. Many years ago, the council produced a leaflet on all the pillboxes around Bradwell, and it was called the Pillbox Walk. It was very interesting, the different designs of pillboxes. Right, now I have Councillor Nunn wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Could I thank Mr. Howson for an excellent piece of work and indeed an excellent overall initiative. I've seen his versions of these papers for Malden, Heybridge and Southminster, and this edition is very much welcome. These sites and buildings, as he's quite rightly pointed out, are not currently recognised on a statutory basis. They're not listed. So it's really important that we do record these features of our district. And I think what they do, particularly this report, is that they highlight the absolute sensitivity, historical built history sensitivity of Bradwell, not least the control tower, or more correctly, the watchtower from RAF Bradwell Bay. And I very much hope, as one, that the watchtower survives. But I'd like to thank Mr. Howson for an excellent piece of work.
Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Out of turn, but still.
No. I'll, particularly on this type of matter, I'll always give way to Councillor Nunn. But Chairman, I've obviously living out here most of my life. I've known the watch tower, as it's called, or whatever it is. But Chairman, I want to ask Mr. Howson, bearing in mind what we've just dealt with Bradwell B, whether or not there is anything we can do to bring weight on Bradwell B to at least try and preserve the control tower, I'll call it, because everyone calls it the control tower, and just a little bit of clarity. At one stage, I thought the blister buildings were involved in this. They were involved in this list as well, which are up on the airfield, and I you know, I can't help thinking. I know Councillor Skeens is quite keen on the old control tower as well, but I can't help thinking, you know, if it is right in the middle of their construction area, then, you know, maybe these people should be asked to move it somewhere else on the site so that it can be preserved to its full glory. But I just wondered what Mr. Houston's view on was that. And I suppose I should also say, because I always do, that Papa did fly a couple of times from Bradwell in a Mosquito during the war, but he didn't have his hands on the controls, to be honest. So thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say thank you also to Mr. Howson. And when are you doing Burnhams? I have asked that before, but we all seem to be at the bottom of the pile. But also I'd like to say how important it is and how disappointed I am that I understand that it's from central government, that we as a council seem to be supporting the Bradwell B when we're going to lose half of what's going to be on that screen. Or maybe not losing it, it's going to be impacted on it, isn't it? And I think it's an absolute shame that we've got such fantastic heritage and coastline that is going to change forever. In some people's views, it's going to be ruined, Chairman, and I understand in other people's views it's not. In my personal view, which I don't normally say unless I have to, I'm really sad that we're going to have that there if we do. I am hoping that modern technology is going to make sure it's moved somewhere else, because it isn't just going to have an impact on Bradwell, it's having an impact on the Malden district per se. And I think the district council should have fought harder to try and stop this coming here. But thank you, Mr. Howson. A lovely bit of work again.
Here, here.
Mr. Howson, you're doing well, but you're still presenting your slides, and I think.
Oh, am I? Oh, sorry. Stop sharing. Is that better?
That's it. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think some members have said actually what I was going to be saying. I would just like to thank Mr. Howson, because obviously I'm no longer chair of P&L. We've changed that committee structure, but I'm very much aware of his commitment and dedication and the amount of work he does actually in reports like this and what he pulls together regarding local heritage assets. And I think it's a testament to this district, and I think it's a testament to his work, and what he does is actually help put Malden on the map. And I very much hope that as a council we do help to preserve some of this heritage that we've been left with, but also for future generations, because it would be a shame to see it all go.
Thank you. Councillor Durham, I've got your name down, but I'm not sure. Did you wish to speak?
Chairman, he's left the meeting now, Councillor Durham.
Oh, right. OK. Tara, is there anybody I've missed?
Councillor Morley was wishing to speak, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Morley. Councillor Morley, you with us? Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Just.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really reiterating what Councillor Nunn was saying. I'm most concerned about the watchtower, and if it is any way it can be rebuilt in somewhere else or somehow preserved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Howson, as has been said by others, you've done a brilliant job. You do a brilliant job for promoting our district, and thank you very much. I'll now go to the leader to sum up before I put this motion to the vote.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I think that it goes without saying all of our thanks to Mr. Howson, and maybe we should just note that when we agree the recommendation in a moment, that we extend our thanks for this great piece of work. But, Chairman, the recommendation is straightforward, and I think it leaves open the way, if we can try and work with these people, if the power station does come forward, that we do try and preserve the watchtower and the blister buildings at waymarks. They are in the list, they are important, and you know, this is a massive infrastructure project. We know there's huge amounts of money involved, and you know, I'd like to think that they would respect our local heritage assets and work with us to try and preserve them, either where they are or on the edge of the site. So, Chairman, I've said that, but quite simply, Chairman, I would propose that we agree the recommendation with a note of thanks to Mr. Howson for all of his work.
Thank you. Tara, call the roll, please.
Just agree. Agree.
Agreed.
Oh, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Oh, well,
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item 13, questions to the Leader of the Council. If any members got a question, will they please speak now or be quiet, because we've been at it 3 hours now. Any questions?
I've got one. I've got one.
Come on then.
I've got one. So I've noticed that we have a rainbow flag up outside our council offices. Is that correct, Councillor Fluker?
Yeah, it does indeed.
Flags come under the chairman.
What does that signify, please?
Well,
what does that?
That signifies our recognition and support of the LGBT community. And in fact, I've been involved in the raising of that flag in the past, and nothing gives me more pleasure than seeing it flying over the council offices. And we've been flying a lot of flags in recognition of all sorts of different diverse groups, and I'm glad you're aware of it, and it is something that gets my 100% support. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, and what I would like to say is
no, you've asked
there any
your question.
homophobic comments?
You've asked your
No, I didn't finish asking my question. If there are any further homophobic comments by anyone, any councillors, such as one that was made recently, just a couple of days ago, by Councillor White, will that be tackled robustly?
Well, all I can say to you is that, you know, if anybody wants to make a complaint against another councillor, they should do that. And that is something that I would always support. So if any councillor has a problem, they should make a complaint and speak to the monitoring officer. And can I just say that Councillor Mays is in fact she's got a rainbow up now, and it's something that I accord with, and I stand by those remarks I just said. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Any other member have a question? Right, thank you. We'll then move on to agenda item business 14, business by reason of special circumstances considered by the chairman.
Sorry, Chairman, I've got a face of someone who's called Robin, a guest on my computer.
Yeah. That's I think. Oh, sorry, Chairman. I think that's somebody who's coming in for the next item. Sorry to interrupt, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Chairman. I wondered who it was. I wasn't clear.
Thank you.
I think it's Robin Thompson. I think. But anyway, yeah, apologies, Chairman. Just to move things forward.
Right. Agenda item 14.
There he is.
I have no additional urgent business. We move to agenda item 15, and I shall read the motion of exclusion of the public and press. We now move into private session, and I move that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act, and this satisfies the public interest tests.
Seconded.
And that's in relation to leisure contracts.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. Tara, we need to switch off the public feed now. Thank you, members of the public.
Yeah, Chairman, we'll just get confirmation that's turned off